Welcome to Tuesday Newsday, your #1 resource for the entire week's worth of VR news. Brand new affordable VR gloves, standalone headsets just got a massive boost, we're about to get a ton of new VR games, Meta just entirely doubled down on the Metaverse, oh, and also presence within VR is about to get a whole lot better with a super cheap full body tracking solution coming. We've got a lot to cover, so let's just get right into the news. So have you ever wanted full body tracking but didn't want to have to sell a kidney to afford it, or fiddle with cameras or a Kinect just to bring your body into VR? Well, there's a project that I've been following for a long time now that is about to launch that uses something called full body estimation to bridge the gap between using full body tracking in something like VR chat and being a half body user. No base stations, no cameras, no IMUs, no straps, no nothing. Just a Steam VR plugin. This is Standable. Basically an improved IK solution that uses the 3-point tracking data of your headset and controllers, something that all VR headsets have, and pretty much guesses or estimates where to emulate tracker positions. And while you are not going to get perfect full body tracking since Standable really has no idea where your legs actually are, there's no tracker actually tracking them, it really does offer massive improvement to the IK and body presence within VR, especially when you compare it to using nothing. In VR chat, for example, right now it's actually impossible to lay down or sit down and have the movement be reflected on your avatar if you don't have full body tracking. And while there are some workarounds, most of the time you're just kinda stiff. And with Standable, not only do all of your movements look way more fluid and natural, but you can actually sit and lay down. Even walking movements look way more natural. And like I said, this is without any IMU or tracker. It's kinda wild. Really, this just bridges the gap between the full body and half body experience. Even for full body tracking users and owners, especially for the days that I don't feel like strapping up, well, this kinda gives you some of the benefits of full body. Plus, this is being made by one guy that's in high school, which is kinda wild as well. But yeah, it'll be releasing sometime soon. Don't know if it'll cost anything yet, but I'll throw the details down below for the V1 beta. Again, don't expect actual full body tracking, but the estimation is just a big upgrade over what we had before. Next up, I recently came across a pretty interesting Indiegogo project. I've always been pretty infatuated with VR gloves, and I've tried out quite a few from Lucas's open source gloves to really expensive commercial setups, but a brand new solution has popped up and it's actually looking pretty promising. This is the BitFrost Pulse. Advertised to have full sub-millimeter finger tracking precision, including splay, force feedback that will hold your fingers back around virtual objects, allowing you to hold things in VR essentially, and even per finger haptic feedback. And all of this comes in at way cheaper than most other glove solutions out there. I mean, the VR glove market can go all the way from $500 on one of the lowest ends to legit $10,000 plus. So the $200 to $300 that Bitwave is asking doesn't seem too terrible. And these actually remind me a lot of Lucas's homemade gloves, which you can build for a lot cheaper than this, but you also have to build them. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking this out. I've been wanting gloves for VR for a long time, just there's a lot of challenges. Like, how do you move in game or press buttons? And it seems like they're trying a lot of new things out, like joystick emulation from thumb movements. Still, of course, this is an Indiegogo project. There are inherent risks to everything, and I think we've seen more of these projects fail than actually go through, but it's still super interesting, and I just had to mention it. So if there's one thing that VR needs more than new headsets or gloves, it's new, fresh software and games. And as much as I love the tech side of things and new hardware, what's the point of having the best headset and gloves in the world if you got nothing to use it with? And there's a lot of good news on that. Meta has announced the long-awaited Meta Gaming Showcase, set to take place just a week before Apple's WWDC event, where it's expected they'll be revealing their new headset. And definitely doesn't seem like a coincidence about these two things lining up. And there have just been so many games that were announced by Meta that just never came to fruition even years later, like the Grand Theft Auto VR remake, for example. I don't know where that ever went, but maybe we'll see it here, hopefully. But I'm really hoping to see some good fresh titles. It's kind of been a while, and something interesting about this announcement as well is that they seem to be hinting at something related to Asgard's Wrath, which, in case you don't know, which I'm not surprised if you don't know, Asgard's Wrath was a PC VR Oculus exclusive game from 2019. It was actually a really good VR game, like probably one of the top 15 games ever made, but because of the exclusive release, it just kind of flew under the radar. So maybe this means a sequel or a Quest 2 or a Quest 3 version of the game, who knows? But we'll all know on June 1st. And talking about Meta, they have had a complete 180 this year. And really the past 2 years for Meta have been a total whirlwind. From the moment they changed their name from Facebook to Meta and kickstarted the whole Metaverse craze, things honestly got pretty bad for the company. Like, people were legitimately wondering if Meta was maybe gonna go under or something. And I mean, that fear kind of makes sense. In one day, they had the biggest corporate loss of any company ever in history. Their valuation dropping by $250 billion in a day. It was wild. And the company was just hemorrhaging money like no other. Then fast forward to earlier this year and the whole Metaverse craze just kind of plummeted. Publicly, it turned into kind of a joke, and just about every company that had announced a big Metaverse plan either publicly canceled their projects, fired the teams responsible for them, or silently put everything on the back burner. Essentially, there was all this hype, just about every big company in the world got on board, and then it all crashed down. They all just left. And lately, Meta has been pretty silent about the Metaverse, instead openly focusing on gaming, AI, and hardware. And it's been working out for them. Their stock price almost recovering entirely after Mark Zuckerberg's recent layoff spree of around 20,000 employees. I guess shareholders are just into that sort of thing. But I will say, Zuckerberg's commitment to his dystopian future is not dead. In fact, after months of silence, Mark just reiterated that they're just as dedicated to building the metaverse as they've always been. And this is a direct response to the recent sentiment that Meta has moved on from the metaverse to work and focus on AI technology. Zuckerberg stating, quote, "A narrative has developed that we're somehow moving away from focusing on the metaverse vision. So I just want to say up front that that's not accurate. We've been focusing on AI and the metaverse, and we will continue to." He also goes on to say that Meta's AI research will be fundamental to their metaverse vision, imagining AI-centric operating systems and AI-generated VR worlds. And now they're still hemorrhaging money even with all the layoffs. In fact, Reality Labs' revenue dropped by half compared to Q4 last year, while their expenses continue to rise. But they've already stated that this is going to happen for the next decade or so. So that's nothing new. But given all of this, it does seem that Meta has made a bit of a comeback, at least in the shareholder realm. Of course, their next move beyond new software is, of course, the Quest 3. Set to launch later this year, likely at Meta's yearly Connect in October, which actually the Quest 3 was also mentioned in this whole conversation. And I think the most interesting thing about this headset is that Meta is looking to make the Quest 3 not so much a super mass consumer device that's so cheap that anyone can buy. They're actually targeting a more enthusiast crowd this time around. Obviously with a very beefed up processor, new lenses, and a new design, but also likely a higher price tag for a big update over its predecessor. And while we don't know how much that price tag is, Mark did say that they're targeting a price point that will be, quote, accessible for lots of people. So whether that's $400 or $500 or $600, I'm not really sure what his idea of accessible is, but I'm getting pretty excited about it either way, because I think new headsets are awesome and the Quest 2 could use an update. And before we get into this big standalone headset upgrade, I think it's time for a Wholesome Break. So this has to be one of the coolest things I've seen for VR stuff. This is Chase, a kid that unfortunately lost both his arms and legs due to an infection at just 4 years old, which is tragic. But maybe this will make your day just a little bit better, because it's really wholesome to see how much he's loving VR and kicking some butt. And yeah, it's just pretty awesome if you ask me. But anyways, now back to the news. So when it comes to immersive VR experiences in games, I think it's kind of funny how it always ends up coming back to Skyrim VR somehow. From physics mods to graphics mods and interactions mods, the game just keeps getting better and better because of the community, and somehow it's turned into like one of the best VR games. And recently, this whole AI helping VR thing is clearer than ever with a new Skyrim mod, using a combination of AI tools to allow for full conversations to be had with NPCs, using ChatGPT for the conversation generation, and XVA Synth and Whisper for text-to-speech and speech-to-text. With this mod, the NPCs not only have a memory of previous conversations you've had with them, but are also aware of the time of day or in-world events. And some of the results are actually pretty uncanny. For example,
"It was a pleasure speaking with you. May the journey ahead bring you much joy and discovery."
And right now, it's still not perfect. Like, there's definitely lag time between responses where the NPCs state, "let me think" for a few seconds before they respond. And the voices are pretty obviously computer generated, like this doesn't sound great, but in general, AI NPCs will and can make VR worlds just feel that much more alive and interactive. Like, I think you could imagine where this could potentially go. And this mod isn't available quite yet, as it's kind of difficult to transfer over API keys than it needs to be, but just like the golf example I used a few weeks ago, truly interactable NPCs in games are coming, and I think they're gonna have a way bigger effect on VR games than first meets the eye. Probably, honestly, a bigger effect in VR games than in flat screen games, because you're staring at somebody and talking to them. But next up, let's talk about this massive upgrade coming to pretty much all standalone VR headsets out there in the form of a virtual desktop upgrade. VD being a platform-agnostic standalone to PC VR streamer application. So Guy, the developer of Virtual Desktop, has been working with Qualcomm to integrate their newest upscaling technique called Snapdragon Game Super Resolution. And basically, this takes a lower resolution rendered image and upscales the image to a higher resolution. And this seemingly simple thing brings a whole slew of benefits. Because you're rendering a lower resolution, it's less taxing for the computer. The lower resolution image also reduces bandwidth, memory, and power requirements, all while the end result that you see in the headset will just look better and sharper than it would before. Generally, this just makes quite literally everything about the virtual desktop experience and PC VR streaming better. And plus, this isn't just for Quest 2 or Quest Pro. This update is live for Pico, Vive XR Elite, Focus 3, basically everything that uses an XR2 and uses virtual desktop. All right, so I recently came in sickness and others don't. So I find motion sickness in VR to be a super important topic that we don't have a lot of answers for. I mean, some people just legit can't be in VR at all because they'll get sick immediately. I remember seeing this article from The Verge where the author explains their experience. They quote, "Ripped off the headset, afraid I was going to hurl. I shouted for help. My partner found me in the fetal position in a cold sweat on the bathroom floor," end quote. And I mean, that's a pretty traumatic experience, but there's way more people out there that have adverse reactions to VR than you'd think. So as somebody that wants as many people to try VR as possible, why? Well, the University of Waterloo held a study and found that the key, beyond inner ear fluids and frame rates, is actually in each person's ability to adjust their senses to the, quote, conflict between reality and virtual reality. They found that people that experience very little cyber sickness are able to adapt their senses to the widest range and do it quickest, with an acronym dubbed SVV, or Subjective Visual Vertical. Or in simple terms, SVV is a measure of how people perceive the orientation of vertical lines. It's being able to tell where you're located and where gravity's at without any other vestibular or proprioceptive sensory inputs. And they found the biggest correlation between intense cyber sickness is people being unable to adjust to those vertical lines, essentially, to where your eyes and brain don't really know what's up or down or left or right. And it gets way more complicated than that, but the main idea here that's interesting is that once we know these sorts of things, once we figure out why people get motion sick beyond the physical aspects of like inner ear fluid, then developing software and hardware for more people becomes easier because we know what perceptual problems we all need to solve. And obviously, the less people that get sick in VR, the happier of a VR experience we're all gonna have. Oh, and one more thing actually, a really awesome game is about to launch in the next few days. This is Rogue Ascent. I got to try it out at GDC, and it's pretty much an entirely hand-tracked game, finger guns at all. And I've been waiting for a really good game like this that has hand tracking, and it felt like something pretty special. So I figured I'd shout them out because they're about to launch, and the premise is actually really interesting. So if you have a Quest 2 or Pro, then definitely go take a look. I know I'm gonna be having fun with it whenever it launches. All right, so leave a question of the week down below, and I may just answer yours next. Otherwise, I will be streaming on Twitch today after this video, so come on in. Of course, I'd love to see you there. And thank you to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Omegas. And until next time, don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.